Hi, my name's Dave Annell. Welcome to episode 23 of Setting the Record Straight. A few days ago, I had a message from a client who was trying to identify the precise whereabouts of an address that she'd found for a family in the 1911 census. They were living in rural North Hertfordshire, and the address itself was a little vague, really typical of the sort of address that you often get in the more rural parts of the country. So the question was, is it possible to locate this address to discover exactly where her ancestors were living? I thought it might be instructive to share with you the method that I used. The best place to start is the census schedule itself. It relates to the Pearmain or Pearman family, and the schedule itself is very straightforward. But we should just note the schedule number 323 at the top right hand of the page, and we'll just look at the exact wording of the address down the bottom here: 2 Small Holdings, Norton, near Letchworth, Herts. Now, if you're searching on Find My Past, and with the 1911 census, you really should be searching on Find My Past. They are, after all, the official partners of the National Archives in providing access to the 1911 census, and their means of navigation between the various documents that make up the 1911 census returns is infinitely superior to Ancestry's. So, as I say, if you are searching on Find My Past, you can now open up the film strip at the bottom, select Extra Materials, and then select the option described here as List. It's not a great description, but it will have to do, and this is what you get. Before we look at the list in a little bit more detail, we'll just give you a quick bit of background. The 1911 census of England and Wales was the first to be taken using a new process. After delivering and collecting the householders' schedules, something they've been doing since 1841, instead of copying the details into their summary books, the enumerators simply checked the schedules for obvious errors or omissions, filled up the box at the foot of the page with the total number of people listed on their schedule, and copied these figures into their new style, very slimmed down summary books. They then had to do more work adding up the figures that they'd extracted from the schedules and coming up with the totals for their district. So the enumerator still had a lot of work to do, but it was a lot less than in previous censuses. The summary books also included descriptions of the boundaries of the district, and in urban districts, the names of the various streets covered by them. In rural districts, this was never quite so straightforward, but here we have some good content, including the fact that the northern boundary of the district ran along the middle of Norton Road. These new enumerator summary books were much smaller than the schedules themselves, and they were very simply bound, stitched effectively. When it came to digitizing the records, the decision was made to unbind them and put the individual sheets through the scanner. As you can imagine, and indeed as you can see from what we have access to online today, this means that the original structure of the physical book was entirely lost. The pages are completely out of order. I was actively involved with the digitisation project during my time at the National Archives, and I recommended that the resulting digital images should be edited so that the books could be digitally reconstructed. Sadly, I didn't win that particular battle. So the summary books can be difficult to navigate online, but at least we have them for 1911, unlike 1921. Let's get back to the list. We can see the name Pearmain, handwriting's not great, next to Schedule 323, with the address 1 Small Holding Cottages, Church Lane, dittoed from the line above. There are in fact 8 households listed here, and as we know that the Pearmains were at number 2, it wouldn't be unreasonable to suspect that what we have here are the returns for numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 small holdings cottages. Returning to the top of the page, we find the following surnames listed. I'm just looking for now at the ones with schedule numbers next to them. These are the occupied properties. So we have 315 Spacey, 316 Bates, 317 at Norton Hall, we've got Mr. Webb, 318 we have Miss Vine at Norton Schoolhouse, 319 Emery, 320 Brown, 321 Deverell, and then we're into small holding cottages, and we've got Rainbow, Pearman, Armishaw, Austin, Rogers, etc., etc. Now, the enumerators invariably walked a predetermined logical route, and the schedules were numbered in the order that they walked around their district. So, in theory, we can use the references to identify properties like Norton Hall and the village school on contemporary maps to work out the likely positions of the unnamed or the vaguely named addresses in between. Here then, courtesy of the wonderful National Library of Scotland's Maps website, is a map dating from 1921 of the village of Norton. And if we zoom in, we can see Norton Hall here with the school just to the northeast. And we know then that we're in the right place and that the cottages are somewhere further in this direction here. Note that these properties are on the south side of Norton Road, and remember that the middle of this road is what forms the northern boundary of the enumeration district in the 1911 census. Now, if I was doing this exercise in another census year, I would spend a lot more time with this map trying to work out the route that the enumerator must have taken to see if I could home in on the address that I was looking for. But when we're working with the 1911 census, there's another contemporary source which can help us to do just that. The records of the Valuation Office survey, better known as Lloyd George's Doomsday. The records of the Valuation Office survey are divided between the National Archives and some local record offices, but it's the National Archives records that are the most useful for this task. And the good news is that they're being digitised on the genealogist website. There's a long way to go before they complete the project, but Hertfordshire is one of the counties that they've already worked on. So I've gone onto the website here and I'm going to do a search. Now, if we do a search for the name Pearmain or similar, in this case, we're not going to find what we're looking for, but that doesn't mean that what we're looking for isn't there. It's rarely that simple. So we'll look instead for the name Spacey, which was another name from the list that we looked at before. And I'm searching in the parish of Norton, and there isn't a county field, but I put Hertfordshire in the keywords there. So that should make sure we're getting the right Norton. And I'll run that search and you'll see that we get 5 results. Now I'm going to drop in on the first entry here, which is for James Spacey. And it turns out that this is the one we're looking for, because you can see as we zoom in that we're right at Norton Hall in the right area. So I'll just close that there and get a bit more space. So we've got James Spacey here. Now I'm just going to bring up the list that we had before. This is the list here, and you can see there's the name Spacey. So as we're going along the road, the next entry that we come to is this one here. And look, it's Miss Bates, and Bates was the second name on our list. Now, the next occupied house here is Norton Hall. And in fact, Norton Hall, there's no entry here on the taxation records. The next one's interesting, though, because we've got this smithy, which you can see is owned and occupied by Mr. F. Chamberlain. And if we look here, we've got in Norton Village, Lockup Smithy Chamberlain. This is the value of the enumeration summary books here from 1911 census. Without them, we wouldn't know that this property was located here and that it was owned by Mr. Chamberlain. So next up, we have Norton Schoolhouse. And of course, we know that Norton Schoolhouse from the 1911 census is where Miss Vine was living. And if we click on here, we can see again, occupier Miss Vine. So we're definitely in the right place. We're going along the south side rather of Norton Road, and we're going to be curving round now into Church Lane. And there's 3 cottages here, owned, occupied by George Emery, by Miss Brown, and the third one here is occupied by Charles Deverell. So we've got Emery, Brown, and Deverell. And if we go back to our 1911 list, Emery, Brown, Deverell, it couldn't be neater. And then, of course, we come into small holding cottages, and we've got the 8 names there with the 8 cottages. And if we look on the map here, we can see the very next property after the Deverells is these 8 properties arranged around an open space. So these are undoubtedly the cottages that we're looking for. We can see here there is only 1 pin dropped and only 1 number representing these 8 properties. So if we click on the pin and go to view records, what we're seeing now is a list of, again, the 8 properties. There are 8 entries, but if we view the field book, this is the data behind the maps. We view the field book for the first one. This is number 534, and it says includes 535 to 541. So what they've done, there are 4 pages in these field books, and they've given us a brief description of the property in at 534, but it's saying it includes 535 to 541, so it also relates to the other properties. Briefly, it says brick, rough cast and tiled cottage containing ground floor, sitting room, kitchen, scullery combined. First floor, 3 bedrooms, repair good, lots of other financial information about the property. On page 3, you sometimes get a sketch of the property here. We haven't got that. And then page 4, there's just a summary of the financial information, which is, after all, what the purpose of the survey was all about. So we're on 53, schedule number 534. What we want to do is to find schedule 535. Now, in fact, I've looked at these and it's the third one on the list here. So if we go to 535, we'll see the same information. It says included in 534, so the detail is in 534 that we've just seen. But look at this, subordinate interest, Norton Small Holdings Limited, who sublet to F. Pearmain at rent of £15, 12 shillings per annum. So we can be certain that that's number 1, that's number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. These are numbers 1 to 8 small holdings cottages. And this one here, number 2, is where the Pearmain family were living in 1911. All that remains now is to, well, you can jump into a car and drive to Norton, or if you can't do that, then you can do the next best thing, which is to look at Google Maps. And here I've got Norton, and we're going to start at the far end of Norton Road here, where the Spacey family lived. I'll just put it onto aerial view, and you can see we're going along Norton Road. There's the farm. Well, actually, we'll just drop down onto the road now and see it at street level. So this is what's left of Norton Hall Farm. And if we keep going along the road, we'll see on the right there's a school. Now, it's obviously the same site as Miss Vine's old school, but I don't think she would recognise the building that's there today. And as we turn round the corner into Church Lane, we've got the cottages occupied by Mr. Emery, Miss Brown, and this one here would be the Deverell's cottage. And then we're coming down to our 8 small holding cottages. Now, unfortunately, very difficult to see because there's been a lot of planting there, but the 4 cottages at the back, so there's number 3, 4, 5, and 6, but number 7 and 8 and numbers 1 and 2 appear to me not to be the original cottages. I think that these are more modern properties that have been built on the site of numbers 1 and 2 and 7 and 8. If we switch to a semi-aerial view, we can see they are a different size to the cottages at the back, whereas we know that the original 1 and 2 and 7 and 8 were the same as these properties because they were all listed as the same in the valuation office survey. So it looks like number 2, which was there, no longer exists. So the house that the Pearmains were in doesn't seem to be there anymore. I'd want to go to check it out on the ground, as it were, but I'm pretty sure that that is a new detached house rather than 2 original cottages. So that, in a nutshell, is the process that I would use. I'd want to look at a lot of other records. I'd want to look at the 1921 census, the 1939 National Register. I'd want to check electoral registers, later 20th century maps as well, just to see the sequence of events and see if we can work out when those cottages were pulled down and the new properties were built. But that's about it. That's how this process works. In this case, I was able to identify at least the location of the house, if not the house itself. It doesn't always work, but 95% of the time, you're going to get pretty close to the location of the house you're looking for. That's all from me. I will be back with another episode of Setting the Record Straight shortly. Thank you very much. Bye.